Hey everyone, it's Ari Honeyford with the Awkwardly Zen podcast, and I am so excited to have one of our amazing members from Awkwardly Zen here, who is also a volunteer and moderates with us. What day do you moderate? Fridays?
Fridays, yeah.
Fridays. All
Fridays
right.
are 1 Eastern.
Right. At what time?
1 Eastern.
1 Eastern. Okay. 11 a.m. Mountain Time for those of you in the Denver area. So this is Chris Gorman, and Chris, I'm so excited. Are you okay with me using your last name?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure, you guys, because sometimes I forget to ask those questions before we get going. So, Chris, what brought you into the spiritual community? What brought you to Awkwardly Zen the first time? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure, yeah. I think I don't know, I've been kind of on like a journey my whole life, I suppose. I think I've been in all the different camps. So I've been in the church camp, I've been in the atheist camp, and I've been like really deeply entrenched in all of those. And then none of those really fit. And so I started giving myself permission to like explore something else, I guess. And the more that I did that, the more that I let go of a lot of the stuff, the more open I was towards, I guess, just alternate belief systems. And it's definitely kind of meshed really well with my life. I found that like the stuff that I choose to believe now makes enriches my life. It makes me happier and brings more adventure to my day. Um, so I think, but for all of it, like to answer your question, what brought me to it is like most people, like I had kind of a low point. I had a point where a bunch of stuff was falling apart and I didn't know what to do. And so I was just trying to figure out stuff. And it led me to, I guess, kind of TikTok helped me in a lot of ways. A lot of the videos on TikTok kind of guided me um, to kind of explore and stuff. But yeah,
Love
I don't know
that.
if I answered your question, but yeah.
That's all right. So let's talk about TikTok since you brought it up, because Chris is on TikTok and sharing his insights and some of the things that he's learned, which I really appreciate. How do you feel like social media and spirituality are working together right now or aren't?
Oh, I think it's working together great right now because it's like right now, social media, specifically TikTok, is very uncensored. And so all the stuff can kind of get out there and get to who it needs to get to. And it's really, I think it gives a lot of people, like for me, Awkwardly Zen did this too, but sharing on TikTok did the same thing. It gave me like, it made me feel like seen, I guess, and that it was okay to be me because I would share these ideas and then I would like, the old version of me in my head is judging me like that's crazy, Chris. That makes no sense. People are going to think you're loony. And then when that doesn't happen, and then people say, "Oh, I resonate with that," it kind of like it makes, "Oh, okay, I'm not alone in this." So there's a huge aspect of because the spiritual journey is lonely. Like it is like it's like you are shifting, and then everybody else around you is staying the same, and you are just like, "What am I supposed to do? Where's my home?" And so later on in the path, other people shift, and you start moving people into your life and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
it's pretty lonely, especially in the beginning of it.
Yeah, it
Um,
definitely can be for sure. I find the same thing. First of all, what is your at on TikTok? Is it at on
I
TikTok?
am, yeah, yeah, I guess I'm novelty seeker. I don't really do it much with it. Whenever I was a lot more active last year, but whenever I had a thought or a download, I would share it and built a little bit of a community there, which is nice.
Well, but I think people can go back and watch some of your older videos, even if you're not posting as much now. And I find the same thing on social media. I was similar in that of if I put myself out there of who I truly am, what's going to happen, right? Is my whole life going to blow up? Is there going to be this like onslaught of hate that comes in? And for me, it's Instagram, not TikTok. But I have found that stepping into sharing my voice in a creative way has really helped me feel more settled in my own spiritual path for sure. Uh,
Absolutely.
yeah, and I do love the idea of the community of social media because it gets such a bad name, and there are plenty of negative things that happen with social media, in my opinion. However, there is that sense of I'm not alone anymore that I get when people watch one of my silly videos that I really appreciate. Um, awesome. So when you first started coming to Awkwardly Zen, gosh, how long ago was that? Probably a year and a half.
Something like that. I think it was a September 22, I think. Yeah. So, yeah.
When you first started coming to Awkwardly Zen, what is it about it that made you stick with us and start interacting a little bit more?
Sure. I honestly, I just kind of went in there and didn't know what to expect. I think I probably saw some angel numbers when I was looking at it or something like that, and I was like, all
Right.
right, maybe check this out. And then I eventually went to one of the meetings, and I found it to be so like I've been through like Al-Anon and the 12-step rooms, and so I found I kind of like outgrew that to a point, and it wasn't like helping me as much. And so I found that what I needed more was more like spiritual support. And that's what I kind of think AZ was for me at the time. It was like a support
Yeah.
group. It was like that, where it was more open and less rigid than a lot of the other places. And so for me, it just felt like a safe place to kind of share my craziness. And then slowly I started making friends and meeting more
Right.
people and really just enjoying, that outlet. I'd go once a week and I look forward to it every week. So
Yeah, I appreciate that. For me, even, I founded the group, but I get so much from the group, right? And for me, I have the same thing where it's like there's not very many places in my life where I don't even think before I say what I believe, right? Because I still am in the quote unquote real world, which means nothing to me anymore because really my spiritual world feels more real. But I definitely appreciate the fact that when I'm in a awkwardly zen room, I can say, this is my belief and this is what I think, understanding that everyone else in the room might think something different. Usually they don't, but everyone else in the room might think something different, and that's okay. And whoever's moderating, whether it's me or you or anyone else, will create that space for all of us to be wherever we are. And also what I love is the ability to change my mind. So let's talk about that with you because going from religion or a specific faith into spirituality, I think can be really jarring for people because you're going from such a rigid mindset into this vast world where not only can you think anything, in my opinion, but also it can shift minute by minute. So, how have you embraced the idea of changing your mind and of not getting yourself stuck in a specific mindset?
sure. Yeah, I guess I've always been like an explorer. So I always like to explore new ideas. And I think I think what really has helped me is going to this awkwardly zen and hearing all the different perspectives and seeing a common thread. Like it's like, some people might call it angels, some people might call it aliens, some people might call it whatever. And it doesn't, a higher self or whatever. It doesn't really matter what you call it. If you're going within and talking to something like that is, communicating with you, that's helpful. You know what I mean? That's good for you. That gives you guidance. And so it's kind of like I hear all these people saying different words for the same concept. And for me, that makes me kind of like hold on to the nitty gritty of it less and be like, okay, so I really don't need to like focus on like, is it angels or is it this or is this the modality that I need or is that wrong and they're doing it wrong. It's more like what's working for me in this moment. And then like, maybe it'll shift, but like I know that I'm on the in the right direction of whatever truth or whatever because I'm seeing all these other modalities point to the same thing. There's a reason why almost everything, all the religions kind of go down to we're one, we're all
Right.
connected. Like that's like a core thing, and I think that is just like a fundamental truth that runs through all the belief systems.
Yeah, it's interesting, that idea of love and compassion, which is buried underneath a lot of rules and regulations in so many different belief systems. I also find that to be eye-opening to me and soul-opening to me, where it's made it easier to try to have some understanding for someone who thinks differently than me. Because if you're hearing one set of something, it's hard not to make that your truth, right? If you're immersed in a world where you're only getting one set of facts. And I think that that's been an interesting part of my own journey is to not have the bitterness and the anger that I had towards certain belief systems, to let that go and to realize that we're all just doing the best we can. And for them at this moment, that might be the best fit for them. But that doesn't mean that later on down the line, they're not going to go, hold on a second. This doesn't work for
Exactly.
me. And I think for me, it's also helping those folks leaving religion, or stepping away from religion a little bit to realize they don't have to leave all of it behind, right? There's so many things that cross over. Have you found that? Because I know, especially when you first got started, you were still somewhat involved in some religious things, I guess is what
Yeah, so I guess when I first started AZ, I had kind of stopped going to church, but I was still kind of like processing stuff a little bit.
Yeah.
And I think my past of having been an atheist really solidly and been a Christian really solidly and like, like led groups and all that stuff, I had this perspective that like, you know, whatever it is, God loves you or something loves you, whatever we'll call it. And it like kind of like carried through. So even when I like dropped the indoctrination, the stuff that hurt me, I was able to like hold on to that like faith of like something, like whether it was whatever it was called, I don't know, but like it was like holding on to that, and it helped me tremendously to kind of get through all that stuff. Um, yeah,
Yeah, I love that. And I think that for so many people, that is the safe landing place they need to get to, right? Is that idea that it's okay for them to walk from one belief system into another, but to bring some of the things that worked for them forward.
yeah,
And I think for me too, even with Awkwardly Zen, like we see people come and go, and some people will come back in later on, and some people stick around forever. And it's just been such a fascinating thing to watch that. What's always fun for me is watching someone who goes and finds another community or another thing to be a part of, and then they come back for a little while or for good to interact with us, and it's so much fun to watch the beliefs that they're bringing in and their ideas and their freshness, of course, as long as they're doing it within our guidelines, which is that there is no right or wrong, right? Like, you can think what you wanna think as long as it's not hurtful, and we'll hold space for that. So we don't have to go deep into your kids, but you are a parent and a very active parent. How have you found the spiritual path has helped you within your parenting?
that's actually, I'm glad you brought that up. Actually, my kids were integral in my spiritual path. I mean, obviously, they're like the ultimate teachers. But like specifically around like questioning what I believed in the church. I remember it was like, I don't know, 3 years ago, I was like telling them a bedtime story, and I was like telling them about like, the Christian story of Jesus and all that. And I was like, kind of like it just didn't resonate. It resonated as like I guess I just kind of adopted it without really like internalizing, like believing it, and it didn't make sense. And it really started off that journey, I suppose. But ultimately, it's. I mean, it helps me. My kids are like I love hanging out and exploring with my kids, and they challenge me to no end. And so it's kind of like like spirituality, like when you're see, I don't know where I'm getting with this, but I know that actually, okay, I'll back up here. So with the kids, I really enjoy because I'm teaching them at the same time that I'm learning. And so I'm able to like when something happens or I see something and we're in the car driving to school or something like that, I can kind of like steer it in a way that's more like I see everything as energy, and so I kind of explain that to them because I think that when you see like our talk, the way we talk right now, I'm sending you energy, you're sending me energy. It's an energetic exchange, like everything is. Like it
Totally.
doesn't matter, and everything kind of coalesces. And so when something happens that like is offensive, like to me or my kids or something like that, I try to explain to them that like, hey, it's not personal. Like it's more like you got to back up a little bit and see that it's like it's actually that person's doing the best they can, and it's not about you. It's not like they're trying to hurt you. It's like so there's a level of my perspective of viewing everything as energy, I think allows me to like step back. And I'm teaching that to my kids. I know that I definitely was not as aware as I was for the first couple years of their life. So like there's definitely some stuff that we have to go through. But like for the most part, my kids help me spiritually tremendously, like just constantly. So
Yeah, I love that. And one of the things that I love that you just said there, Chris, is that idea that like what you shared before doesn't resonate with you anymore. And so that idea of going back with them and like getting to spend that time of, hey, it's okay to change your mind, right? It's okay to shift and to adjust. I my daughter is 21, and I still am doing that with her, as she says something like, I don't know why I'm scared to tell you this. And excuse me, and I'll be like, well, I do, because the area of 5 years ago was not as open to this. And so you were scared because I probably was like this and this and this. And it's like trying to love myself through it as well as her, but to let her understand that like we're shifting, we're adjusting. You're going to do that your entire life. And that could be a beautiful thing, not a scary thing if you let it.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
love that. Okay, so what have you been really just zoning in on right now spiritually? Because I've watched you kind of jump from thing to thing, and I love that. But what's the thing right now where you're like, this is fascinating?
What's my novelty? Yes. So I have two things. One's not spiritual. One is I got a one wheel. It's like an electric skateboard, and I ride that all over town. So that's super fun. But my other thing that I really am getting into is sacred geometry.
Mm.
So I watched a podcast where someone explained like the flower of life, I believe it was, and it just kind of got me really thinking about it. I've been drawing giant Merkabas all over my town with my kids. So we've
I
gotten
saw that,
really
I
good.
think. I think I saw
Yeah,
that.
we got like a string and make the circle, and so I'm drawing, and that's kind of like and I do stuff like that with my kids too. Like I give books, spiritual books to little libraries. Like I like to go on different um, I like to go on little adventures that have like a net positive for the collective, I suppose. And so, like, when I have a book that I really like and I think it's helpful and I donate it somewhere and I set the intention that someone's going to get that, I think that's beautiful. When I go out and I draw like a Merkaba somewhere, and then maybe someone sees it and is like, what is that? And then they search up Merkaba, and then who knows, that brings them down a rat. I don't know if that happens, but
Right.
I mean, like planting, I feel like I'm like planting seeds, and that's I like to do that with my kids too, because I found that specifically the little library thing, it helps me to overcome a lot of the hoarding mentality, like the scarcity mindset, where because it's like a book I like, right? And I could just keep it on my shelf and then just sit there. But by like releasing it and like giving it out in the world, it kind of is like a practice of understanding that like everything's in motion, and like what you give out you'll get back. Like it's just kind of like a balance, versus if you're trying to hold on to everything, you end up going to lose everything. That's kind of how that's this weird ironic thing that how it works.
Yeah, and I love just briefly, the little library thing is for those of you who don't live in a city, you might not have those, but it's this idea that people put up these little tiny like huts basically, and people go put their books in it, and you can just go up to what any one of these little boxes and grab a book out of it. So if you don't have one in your town, start it. It'd be fun. But I do love the idea that we pass it forward. And in my own spiritual path, excuse me, in my own spiritual path, I've also been finding that things are not mine, right? It's like I'm borrowing them.
Yeah,
Anything from jewelry to decks of cards to essential oils, like someone will walk into my life and all of a sudden I'm like, oh, this isn't mine anymore. This belongs to you. And I love that idea of energy flow in that way as well, right? And it's been such a I am definitely a I love my stuff person. And so when there's only been a couple things, but there's been a couple where I've gotten the message, you got to give this to that person. And I'm like, but I love it. But I also love that I get to pass that energy on. So I
sure.
love that you do that. Okay, so to wrap things up, if you had to say one thing that just keeps you feeling your most spiritual, your highest frequency, it just keeps you in the moment,
Mhm.
what would that be? What would you share?
It would be the concept that every religion shares this. It's that there's a heaven, there's a Shangri-La, there's another dimension above ours, and we're just kind of like experiencing like we're like a vehicle, like our body is a vehicle. And so that sounds weird, but in a way, by like acknowledging that there's something like higher than us, it really helps like make things feel less like the end of the world. Like when something bad happens, like you can just kind of like zoom out a little bit and be like, all right, yeah, that awful thing happened. There's probably a lesson in that for me. I'll figure it out down the road. But like, I understand that this is not it. Like, this isn't the whole thing. It really takes the edge off, I think, of the rough stuff happening and the chaos that we see in the world. Because honestly, like everything is exactly as it should be. It always has been, it always will be. And we just need to accept that and then just kind of flow and focus on what we want and what we love. Follow our greatest excitement in that moment to the best of our ability.
Yeah, I love the idea of being in the moment no matter what. And for me, it's like what can I do to bring more light into the world, which almost always comes back to my own personal joy and happiness and all of those things, which is a hard lesson for me, because I'm such a giver. I want to give, 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 give. And figuring out that giving is okay as long as that energetic flow is going with it, right? As long as I'm not giving to somebody with the idea that I need something back, or I'm over giving and not taking care of myself. I think that flow and just easing into it can be so beautiful for sure.
Yeah, and that's the thing that I think a lot of people miss. It's especially since a lot of people in the spiritual community kind of have like a more codependent type, like I care about everybody else but me. Like I think that's a common thread, at least what I've seen.
Yeah.
And at least healing from that is that hold on, I kind of zoned out. What was I saying? Um,
The idea that it's like in spirituality, you've got to give to everybody else, but we've got to take care of ourselves as well. Is that where you're going?
yeah, that's it. Like, yeah, sorry. So a
That's
lot of
okay.
times people don't realize like we are like, like we're supposed to do good and raise the collective and help people. Well, like we're a person too. And like, God, higher power, whatever you want to call it, loves everybody equally. He loves us too. So like we can only get we're the only people that can give ourselves certain things. And so like we need to prioritize ourselves first
Yeah.
and foremost. And then of the abundance from when we love ourselves and we treat ourselves well and we have all this extra, that's what we give. Whereas in my whole life, for most of my life, I was giving to everybody and then like saying, "Oh, I don't need it. I'm fine." And it was
Right.
it was absolutely like not the way to go. So I think that's really I think collectively what we're all learning is self-love. We're learning
Right.
that we matter just as much as anyone. So we need to like harvest like ourselves, like really like become sovereign in our own energy. So yeah.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I think, this idea, I was just doing a reading yesterday and I was telling her, you're waiting for everyone else to make you happy and they're not going to do that. Like that's
Yep.
not their job. So, and her guides were so clear. And of course, my guides were all like nodding behind her of like, it's our job, right? We get this beautiful opportunity to make ourselves happy. And we're not taught that in so many ways. And so I think it's been really beautiful to uh watch people figure that out. And it's not in a I'm going to be selfish and gluttonous and take care of all the things way. It's in a like, what do I want to do to feel comfortable in my own skin and feel happy a majority of the time and be a part of the light of the universe. And I just I'm still working on that for sure, but I love that journey and I love watching you on that journey as well of like, yeah, no, I'm shifting here and I'm adjusting here and I'm doing all of this. So Chris, thank you so much for being with us today. Love, love, love that. You guys can see Chris most Fridays on the Zen Zoom. And so check that out on awkwardlyzen.com. And then what is your at again on TikTok?
Novelty seeker. I'm always seeking novelty. So yeah.
Okay. So we'll
Yeah.
put that in the show notes so we make sure we get it right. And thanks, Chris. And we will talk to you again soon.
All right. Thanks, Harry. It was great chatting with you.